Have you ever felt your heart drop to the pit of your stomach while surrounded by people who were supposed to love you? That's exactly what happened to me that evening, sitting at my own dining table, watching my husband of 8 years look our son in the eye and casually suggest he wasn't his father. The room filled with nervous laughter, my in-laws, his siblings, even a cousin, all seemingly entertained by what they considered family drama. But this wasn't entertainment. This was my life, my child's life, being treated like a punchline to a joke no one should ever tell. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. It was our anniversary dinner, the first one we'd hosted in the small craftsman house that Tyler and I had spent 5 years saving for. I'd dedicated the entire week to planning this perfect evening, marinating the roast, polishing the silverware, arranging wildflowers in crystal vases I'd inherited from my grandmother, even handwriting place cards with each guest's name in my best calligraphy. I wanted this dinner to feel like a celebration, like a milestone, like proof that our love still mattered. Instead, it became the moment everything I thought I knew about my marriage shattered into pieces too small to ever put back together. We had just served dessert, a 3-layer chocolate cake that our son Liam had helped me frost that morning, his little fingers carefully placing raspberries around the edge to make it fancy, Mama. The conversation had been flowing easily, helped along by the 3rd bottle of wine. My mother-in-law Vivian was telling a story about Tyler as a teenager when he suddenly leaned back in his chair, swirled the whiskey in his glass, and said those words that still echo in my nightmares. Well, it's not like I'm even sure the kid is really mine anyway. The room didn't go silent. That would have been better somehow. Instead, there was that awful ripple of uncomfortable laughter. My sister-in-law Angela covered her mouth, not to stop her laugh but to hide it. Tyler's brother Mark snorted into his wine glass. And Vivian, my mother-in-law who had always treated me with barely concealed suspicion, simply raised an eyebrow and said, "Well, I always did wonder. He doesn't have the Reynolds chin, does he?" I felt the blood drain from my face, my fingers suddenly numb around my fork. The cake in my mouth turned to sawdust. My first instinct was to laugh it off, to pretend it was just another tasteless joke in Tyler's increasingly bitter repertoire. But then I saw Liam, our son, 7 years old with unruly brown curls and eyes too serious for his age, sitting there beside me, his fork suspended halfway to his mouth, his gaze moving from his father to me and back again. In that endless moment, I realized with sickening clarity that he had heard every word, and worse, he understood exactly what was being implied. I wanted to shield him, to cover his ears, to whisk him away from this table of adults who had forgotten, or didn't care, that their cruel words were cutting into a child's heart. But before I could move, before I could even find my voice through the shock, Liam did something I never expected. He put down his fork, neatly, deliberately, the way I'd taught him to when he wanted to show good manners. He straightened his shoulders inside his favorite blue button-down shirt, the one he'd insisted on wearing because it's a special dinner, Mama. And then he looked directly at Tyler with an expression I'd never seen on my little boy's face before, a mixture of hurt, confusion, and something eerily close to pity. "Dad," he said, his voice small but steady, clear enough that everyone at the table turned to look at him. "I know who my real father is." My heart seemed to stop. I reached for his hand under the table, not to silence him but to support him, to let him know he wasn't alone in this horrible moment. But Liam gently pulled away. He wasn't finished. Tyler's smirk faltered. "What are you talking about, buddy? It was just a joke. Grown-up stuff." But Liam didn't smile, didn't accept this weak attempt to brush away the cruelty. Instead, he stood up from his chair, all 48 pounds of him, suddenly seeming taller than I'd ever seen him. "I heard you on the phone last week," he said. You were talking to someone named Kate. You said you stayed with us because it looks good for your job. You said—" His voice caught, but he pushed through. "You said being a dad was never what you wanted anyway." The laughter disappeared. Entirely. Vivian's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Mark stared at his plate. Angela suddenly became fascinated with her napkin. Tyler's face drained of color, then flushed dark red. I should have been devastated by this revelation. And part of me was. But another part, a stronger part, felt a surge of fierce pride watching my son stand up for himself, for me, for the truth. I had spent years teaching him about honesty, about respect, about having the courage to speak up when something was wrong. I just never imagined he would need to use those lessons at our own dinner table against his own father. The years of doubts, of Tyler's growing coldness, of trying to prove myself worthy of a love that kept retreating, it all crystallized in that moment. This wasn't just about one cruel comment. This was about years of small betrayals leading to this breaking point. Tyler pushed back from the table, chair legs scraping harshly against the hardwood floor. "Liam, go to your room, now." I found my voice then, rising from somewhere deep inside me. "No," I said, the word coming out stronger than I expected. "He stays. He's not the one who needs to leave this table." The silence that followed wasn't just uncomfortable. It was transformative. In that pause, I could feel something fundamental, shifting, not just in the room, but in me. For the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't worried about keeping the peace or managing everyone else's feelings. I was thinking about what Liam needed, what I needed. I was remembering who I used to be before I started making myself smaller to accommodate Tyler's growing distance. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Liam was still standing, his small hands now flat on the table, steadying himself. In the soft dining room light, I could see tears threatening at the corners of his eyes, but his chin was up, his back straight. He wasn't backing down. I placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling his quick, shallow breathing. "It's okay, baby," I said, my voice low but firm. "You told the truth. You did nothing wrong." Vivian cleared her throat. "I think we should all just calm down. I'm sure Tyler didn't mean—" "He meant it," I interrupted, surprising myself again. Maybe not to say it out loud, in front of everyone, but he meant it. And Liam deserves better. We both do. Tyler stood now too, his chair tipping backward and crashing to the floor. "This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing yourself, Emma, and you're letting him be disrespectful." I felt a strange calm settling over me, like the quiet after a violent storm. "The only disrespect at this table is what you just did to your son, to our family." Around us, the other adults were shifting uncomfortably, suddenly fascinated by their dessert plates, their wine glasses, anything but the scene unfolding before them. They had been happy enough to laugh along with Tyler's joke, but now that the consequences were visible in a child's tears, they wanted no part of it. Liam spoke again, his voice stronger now. "Mom works 2 jobs. She coaches my soccer team. She helps me with homework every night." He looked around the table, making eye contact with each adult in turn. "Did you know she never misses a bedtime story, even when she's really tired?" The simplicity of his defense nearly broke me. In his 7-year-old mind, these were the things that mattered, the evidence of love that couldn't be questioned. And he was right. Tyler rolled his eyes. "Nobody's saying your mom isn't a good mom, Liam. This is about something else, something you're too young to understand." But Liam wasn't deterred. "I understand that you made Mom cry last week when you didn't come home until really late. I understand that Grandma Vivian is always saying mean things about Mom when she thinks I can't hear." His voice was gaining confidence with each word. I understand that you stopped coming to my games because you said they were boring. Each revelation was like a spotlight illuminating corners of our family life that I had tried to keep in shadow, even from myself. I had been working so hard to maintain the illusion of a happy family that I hadn't realized how clearly Liam could see through it. "That's enough!" Tyler snapped, but his authority seemed to have evaporated. "No," Liam said, with a certainty that seemed to come from somewhere beyond his years. "It's not enough. Mom always says we have to tell the truth, even when it's hard. And the truth is—" He took a deep breath, his small chest rising and falling. "The truth is that you don't act like my dad most of the time. You act like someone who lives in our house sometimes." The room fell completely silent. Not the awkward silence of social discomfort, but the weighted silence that follows when an undeniable truth has been spoken aloud for the first time. And see, that moment, looking at my son, standing small but mighty in his blue button-down shirt, speaking his truth with such innocent clarity, I felt something shift inside me, a resolve forming, a decision crystallizing. This moment, painful as it was also a gift. A chance to see clearly what I had been trying not to see for years. A chance to choose a different path forward. I stood up and put my arm around Liam's shoulders. I could feel him trembling slightly, but his gaze remained steady, locked with his father's. In his eyes I saw hurt, yes, but also relief. The relief that comes from finally speaking a truth that has been buried too long. "I think," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "that this dinner is over." Tyler looked around the table, seemingly expecting someone to back him up, to laugh along, to help him dismiss this moment as an overreaction. But no one did. Even Vivian, who had never missed a chance to undermine me in the past, was silent. Her eyes fixed on Liam with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Fine," Tyler finally said, reaching for his keys on the sideboard. "I need some air anyway. This is ridiculous." He stormed out, the front door slamming behind him hard enough to make the glasses on the table rattle. The remaining guests began to stir, murmuring awkward apologies, gathering purses and jackets, eager to escape the emotional wreckage of what was supposed to be a celebration dinner. As they filed out, offering platitudes and avoiding my eyes, I remained standing with my arm around Liam, both of us still as statues in the center of a storm that had just blown through our lives. I didn't cry. I didn't apologize. I simply thanked them for coming, my voice mechanical, my mind already racing ahead to what would come next. When the last guest had gone and the door closed behind them, I looked down at Liam. His body had relaxed somewhat, but his face still held that mixture of relief and sorrow that seemed too complex for his young features. "You okay, bud?" I asked softly, crouching down to his level. He nodded slowly. "Are you mad at me?" The question broke my heart. "No, baby, not at all. I'm proud of you." "Really?" His eyes widened slightly, searching my face for confirmation. "Really?" I said firmly. "You told the truth. That takes courage. More courage than most grown-ups have." He seemed to consider this, his forehead furrowing in the way it did when he was processing something difficult. "Is Dad coming back?" I hesitated, the weight of his question hanging between us. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "But whatever happens, you and me, we're going to be okay. I promise." He nodded again, seeming satisfied with this answer for now. "Can we clean up tomorrow? I'm really tired." I smiled, feeling a rush of tenderness for this little person who had just shown more strength than I had in years. "Absolutely. Let's get you ready for bed." As I helped him brush his teeth and change into pajamas, as I tucked him into bed and sat beside him stroking his hair until his breathing deepened into sleep, I felt a strange mixture of emotions swirling inside me. Grief for the family we had been trying to be. Anger at Tyler, at his family, at myself for allowing things to reach this point. But underneath it all, something unexpected was taking root. Relief. Relief that the pretending was over. Relief that, painful as this night had been, it had also been honest in a way our family hadn't been for a long time. I kissed Liam's forehead and quietly left his room, pulling the door halfway closed the way he liked it. In the hallway, I paused, taking a deep breath. The house was silent now, the dinner party mess waiting downstairs, Tyler's keys gone from the hook by the door. Tomorrow there would be decisions to make, conversations to have, a new reality to face. But tonight, in this moment, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. Because for the first time in years I was seeing clearly, and I knew, with absolute certainty, that whatever came next, it would be built on truth. The morning after the dinner party, I found myself standing in the kitchen, staring at the mess that seemed frozen in time. Half-eaten cake still sat on. Dessert plates. Wine glasses held the burgundy dregs of conversations cut short. The place cards I'd spent hours creating were scattered like fallen leaves across the table. One had fallen to the floor, Tyler's, face down on the hardwood like an omen I should have seen coming years ago. I picked it up, ran my finger over the careful lettering. Tyler Reynolds, my husband, the man I'd built a life with, planned a future with, created a child with. The man who, in a single cruel moment, had made me question every memory, every promise, every gentle touch we'd ever shared. I hadn't slept much. After putting Liam to bed, I'd sat in the living room for hours, waiting for the sound of Tyler's car in the driveway, the jingle of his keys, some sign that he was coming back to face what he'd done. But the house remained silent, the darkness outside unbroken by headlights. Eventually, I'd checked my phone to find a single text. Staying at Mark's. We'll talk tomorrow. We'll talk tomorrow. As if this were a minor disagreement about bills. Or vacation plans. As if he hadn't publicly humiliated me, hadn't wounded our son in a way that might never fully heal. I made coffee on autopilot, the familiar rhythm of measuring grounds and filling the water reservoir oddly comforting in its normalcy. The house was quiet, Liam still asleep, exhausted from the emotional storm of the previous night. I cradled the warm mug between my palms and tried to think logically about what should happen next. The truth was, Tyler's comment hadn't come completely out of nowhere. Our marriage had been fraying at the edges for years, unraveling so slowly I could pretend not to notice the growing distance between us. We'd met when I was 23, finishing my nursing degree and waiting tables at night to pay tuition. Tyler was 28, confident and charming, already established in his career at a prestigious architectural firm. He came into the restaurant with clients, ordered expensive bottles of wine with easy authority, tipped generously. When he asked for my number, I felt like I'd been chosen for something special, plucked from the ordinary world into his sleeker, more successful one. He'd pursued me with an intensity that felt like love. Flowers delivered to my tiny apartment, surprise tickets to concerts, weekend getaways to coastal bed and breakfasts. I was dazzled, not just by the gifts, but by his focus, the way he looked at me like I was the only person in any room. I finished school, got hired at Memorial Hospital, moved into his downtown loft. We married after a year, a lavish ceremony that his parents largely orchestrated. I went along with it, grateful to be welcomed into this family that seemed so much more put together than my own scattered relatives. My father had left when I was 12. My mother had done her best, working multiple jobs, keeping us afloat. But there had never been the kind of stability the Reynolds family represented. Vivian had been cold from the start, assessing me with shrewd eyes at our first meeting. "So you're a nurse," she'd said. making it sound like I'd admitted to being a street sweeper. Later, I overheard her telling Tyler that he was settling, that he could do better than some girl from the East Side with community college ambitions. But Tyler had defended me then, had seemed proud of me even, had told his mother that my determination, my work ethic, my compassion were exactly why he loved me. When had that changed? When had I become someone he resented rather than respected? I sipped my cooling coffee, trying to pinpoint the moment our marriage had started to crumble. Was it after Liam was born, when sleep deprivation and the demands of a newborn meant I had less energy for being the perfect wife? Was it when Tyler made partner at his firm, and suddenly his work dinners and business trips multiplied, creating a life separate from our family? Or was it more recent, the past year, when I'd returned to school part-time to pursue my nurse practitioner license, reclaiming some ambition of my own? Maybe it was all of these things. Maybe it was none of them. Maybe the man I married had always been capable of the cruelty he'd displayed last night, and I had simply chosen not to see it. The sound of small feet padding down the stairs pulled me from these thoughts. Liam appeared in the kitchen doorway, hair mussed from sleep, still in the dinosaur pajamas he'd worn to bed. Despite everything, my heart lightened at the sight of him. "Morning, buddy," I said, trying to sound normal. "Did you sleep okay?" He nodded, climbing onto one of the kitchen stools, his serious eyes taking in the untouched dinner mess. "Is Dad home?" I took a breath. "No, not yet. He stayed at Uncle Mark's last night." Liam absorbed this information, his face thoughtful. "Because of what I said?" I moved around the counter to sit beside him, turning his stool so we were face to face. "No, Liam, because of what he said. What happened last night was not your fault. Not any part of it." He looked down at his hands, small fingers tracing the pattern in the countertop. "I didn't mean to make everyone leave." "Oh, baby." I pulled him into a hug, feeling his thin shoulders under my arms, the rapid beat of his heart against mine. "You didn't make anyone leave. You told the truth when grown-ups were telling lies. That was brave." He pulled back, searching my face with those solemn eyes that sometimes made him seem older than his years. "Are you and Dad going to get divorced?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Not because it was unexpected. What child wouldn't wonder after last night? But because I realized I already knew the answer. "I don't know yet," I said, choosing honesty over false reassurance. "But whatever happens between me and your dad, it doesn't change anything about how much we both love you." Even as I said the words, I wondered if they were true. Did Tyler love Liam the way a father should? Had his casual cruelty last night been an aberration, or a revelation of something that had been true all along? "I'm hungry," Liam said, the abrupt change of subject so characteristic of children his age that it made me smile despite everything. "Pancakes," I suggested, grateful for the opportunity to do something concrete, something normal. He nodded, his face brightening slightly. "With chocolate chips?" "Absolutely with chocolate chips. We deserve it after that dinner party, don't you think?" He gave me a small smile, the first since last night, and it felt like a tiny victory. As we made breakfast together, Liam carefully measuring flour into a bowl, me heating the griddle, I found myself studying him with new eyes. Not looking for Tyler's features, as I'd caught myself doing in the dark hours of the night, but seeing him fully as his own person. His thoughtful nature, his sensitivity, his innate sense of fairness and truth. Whatever genetic material had combined to create him, I was fiercely proud of the person he was becoming. We were just sitting down to eat when I heard the front door open. Liam's head snapped up, his body tensing. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "It's okay," I said, unsure if I was reassuring him or myself. Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking rumpled and tired. His clothes, were the same from last night, his eyes bloodshot. He hesitated at the threshold, as if unsure of his welcome in his own home. "Hey," he said awkwardly, his gaze flicking from me to Liam and back again. "Hi," I replied, my voice neutral. "We're having breakfast." It was such an inadequate exchange, after the emotional explosion of last night. But what was there to say in front of our son? The real conversation would have to wait. "Can I join you?" Tyler asked, a note of uncertainty in his voice that I wasn't used to hearing. I looked at Liam, silently letting him make the call. He gave a small nod. "There's extra batter," I said, standing to get another plate. Tyler sat down across from Liam, an uncomfortable silence descending on the kitchen. The easy rhythm of our breakfast had been disrupted, the warm cocoon of safety I'd been trying to create for Liam now pierced by tension. "Listen, buddy," Tyler finally said, leaning toward Liam. "About last night, what I said. It was just a stupid joke. I'd had too much to drink and I wasn't thinking." Liam looked at him steadily, his fork suspended over his plate. "It didn't sound like a joke." Tyler glanced at me, clearly hoping for some help, but I remained silent. This was his mess to clean up. "Well, it was," Tyler insisted. "A very bad joke. I didn't mean it." "What about what you said on the phone to Kate?" Liam asked, his voice small but direct. "Was that a joke too?" I saw Tyler flinch, caught in a truth he hadn't expected Liam to remember in the light of day. "That was at a private conversation that you shouldn't have been listening to." "I wasn't trying to listen," Liam said. "I was getting water and you were really loud." Tyler's jaw tightened. I could see him struggling between defensiveness and the desire to make peace. "Look, grown-ups sometimes say things they don't mean. When they're upset, like how you might say you hate homework, but you don't really hate it." "I do hate homework," Liam replied with such serious certainty that I almost laughed despite everything. "You know what I mean?" Tyler said, an edge of impatience creeping into his voice. "The point is, I love you. You're my son. End of story." It was what any parent should say. What any child deserved to hear. But something in Tyler's delivery felt hollow, performative. Like he was saying the right lines but hadn't internalized the meaning behind them. Liam seemed to sense it too. He nodded politely, but returned his attention to his pancakes, effectively ending the conversation. We finished breakfast in strained silence. When Liam asked to be excused to watch cartoons, I readily agreed, relieved that he would be out of the crossfire for what was sure to come next. As soon as he left the room, Tyler's posture changed. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his hands over his face. "Jesus, Emma, what a mess." "A mess you created," I said quietly, beginning to clear the plates. I know, I was drunk. It was a stupid thing to say." "It wasn't just stupid, Tyler. It was cruel. To me, and worse, to Liam." He sighed heavily. "I apologized, didn't I? What more do you want?" I placed the dishes in the sink with deliberate care, fighting the urge to smash them against the porcelain. "What I want," I said slowly, turning to face him, "is to understand why you would say something like that in the first place. Do you actually believe it, or were you just trying to hurt me?" Tyler's gaze slid away from mine. "Of course I don't believe it. Liam is obviously mine." "Obviously," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "You know, I've never given you any reason to doubt that. Not once in our entire relationship have I been unfaithful or dishonest with you. I know that," he said, his tone defensive. "Do you? Because last night you were pretty comfortable letting your entire family believe otherwise." He stood up abruptly, moving to the coffee pot, keeping his back to me. "I told you, it was just a joke that landed badly. Can we please just move past it?" "Move past it," I echoed. Like Liam can just move past hearing his father suggest he doesn't belong to him? Like I can move past being humiliated in front of your family? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. And what about what Liam overheard? That conversation with Kate? Tyler's shoulders stiffened. He misunderstood. He's 7, for God's sake. He doesn't understand adult conversations. He understood enough, I said. Who's Kate, Tyler? He turned to face me finally, coffee mug clutched in his hands like a shield. She's a colleague, nothing more. A colleague you talked to about our marriage? About staying with us for appearances? It wasn't like that, he insisted. It was a bad day at work. I was venting. People say things they don't mean when they're frustrated. I studied his face. This man I had lived with for 8 years, shared a bed with, raised a child with. When had he become such a stranger? Or had I just been too afraid to see what was right in front of me? Are you having an affair? I asked. Directly. No, he exclaimed, seeming genuinely offended by the question. Absolutely not. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but strangely, I realized it didn't matter as much as I would have expected. Whether he was physically cheating or not, he had already betrayed our family in ways that cut deeper than any affair. I think you should leave for a while, I said, the words emerging with a calm certainty that surprised me. Tyler's eyes widened. What? Because of one stupid comment? You're overreacting, Emma. Am I? Because it feels like last night was just the most visible symptom of something that's been wrong for a long time. I crossed my arms, suddenly cold despite the warm kitchen. When was the last time you came to one of Liam's soccer games? Or helped him with homework? When was the last time you asked me about my classes, or my day at work, or anything about my life at all? I've been busy, he said defensively. The Charleston project is at a critical stage. You know that. You're always busy, Tyler, and there's always a project. But somewhere along the way, you stopped making room for us in your life. We became inconvenient, an obligation, something you tolerate rather than cherish. He set his coffee mug down hard, liquid sloshing over the rim. That's not fair. I provide for this family. I work 60-hour weeks so we can have this house, so Liam can go to that fancy school, so you can take your classes without worrying about money. And I'm grateful for that, I said sincerely. But a family needs more than financial support. We need your presence, your attention, your heart. I took a shaky breath. And I'm not sure that's something you want to give anymore. Tyler ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. So what? You want a divorce? Over one bad night? I want some space, I said. I want time to think about what's best for Liam and for me. And what about what's best for me? He demanded. This is my house too. My family. Yes, it is, I agreed. A family you suggested might not even be yours last night. A family you told a colleague you only stay with for appearances. So forgive me if I'm having a hard time believing that what's best for us is actually a priority for you. We stared at each other across the kitchen, the space between us filled with years of accumulated hurts, disappointments, and failures large and small. In his eyes, I could see a mixture of anger and fear. Not fear of losing us, I realized with a pang, but fear of losing control of the narrative, of having to face consequences for his actions. I think, I said quietly, that we both need some time to decide what we really want going forward. And I think Liam needs a break from the tension between us. Tyler's jaw worked, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might argue further, might refuse to leave the house he paid for, the life he had orchestrated. But then his shoulders sagged slightly. Fine, he said tersely. I'll pack a bag. But this isn't over, Emma. We need to talk about this like adults. We will, I promised, but not today. Not while everything is still so raw. He nodded curtly and left the kitchen. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the creak of the bedroom door. Did Tyler love Liam the way a father should? Had his casual cruelty last night been an aberration, or a revelation of something that had been true all along? "I'm hungry," Liam said, the abrupt change of subject so characteristic of children his age that it made me smile despite everything. "Pancakes," I suggested, grateful for the opportunity to do something concrete, something normal. He nodded, his face brightening slightly. "With chocolate chips?" "Absolutely with chocolate chips. We deserve it after that dinner party, don't you think?" He gave me a small smile, the first since last night, and it felt like a tiny victory. As we made breakfast together, Liam carefully measuring flour into a bowl, me heating the griddle, I found myself studying him with new eyes. Not looking for Tyler's features, as I'd caught myself doing in the dark hours of the night, but seeing him fully as his own person. His thoughtful nature, his sensitivity, his innate sense of fairness and truth. Whatever genetic material had combined to create him, I was fiercely proud of the person he was becoming. We were just sitting down to eat when I heard the front door open. Liam's head snapped up, his body tensing. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "It's okay," I said, unsure if I was reassuring him or myself. Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking rumpled and tired. His clothes were the same from last night, his eyes bloodshot. He hesitated at the threshold, as if unsure of his welcome in his own home. "Hey," he said awkwardly, his gaze flicking from me to Liam and back again. "Hi," I replied, my voice neutral. "We're having breakfast." It was such an inadequate exchange. After the emotional explosion of last night. But what was there to say in front of our son? The real conversation would have to wait. "Can I join you?" Tyler asked, a note of uncertainty in his voice that I wasn't used to hearing. I looked at Liam, silently letting him make the call. He gave a small nod. "There's extra batter," I said, standing to get another plate. Tyler sat down across from Liam, an uncomfortable silence descending on the kitchen. The easy rhythm of our breakfast had been disrupted, the warm cocoon of safety I'd been trying to create for Liam now pierced by tension. "Listen, buddy," Tyler finally said, leaning toward Liam. "About last night, what I said. It was just a stupid joke. I'd had too much to drink and I wasn't thinking." Liam looked at him steadily, his fork suspended over his plate. "It didn't sound like a joke." Tyler glanced at me, clearly hoping for some help, but I remained silent. This was his mess to clean up. "Well, it was," Tyler insisted. "A very bad joke. I didn't mean it." "What about what you said on the phone to Kate?" Liam asked, his voice small but direct. "Was that a joke too?" I saw Tyler flinch, caught in a truth he hadn't expected Liam to remember in the light of day. "That was at a private conversation that you shouldn't have been listening to." "I wasn't trying to listen," Liam said. "I was getting water and you were really loud." Tyler's jaw tightened. I could see him struggling between defensiveness and the desire to make peace. "Look, grown-ups sometimes say things they don't mean. When they're upset, like how you might say you hate homework, but you don't really hate it." "I do hate homework," Liam replied with such serious certainty that I almost laughed despite everything. "You know what I mean?" Tyler said, an edge of impatience creeping into his voice. "The point is, I love you. You're my son. End of story." It was what any parent should say. What any child deserved to hear. But something in Tyler's delivery felt hollow, performative. Like he was saying the right lines but hadn't internalized the meaning behind them. Liam seemed to sense it too. He nodded politely, but returned his attention to his pancakes, effectively ending the conversation. We finished breakfast in strained silence. When Liam asked to be excused to watch cartoons, I readily agreed, relieved that he would be out of the crossfire for what was sure to come next. As soon as he left the room, Tyler's posture changed. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his hands over his face. Jesus, Emma, what a mess. A mess you created, I said quietly, beginning to clear the plates. I know, I was drunk. It was a stupid thing to say. It wasn't just stupid, Tyler. It was cruel. To me, and worse, to Liam. He sighed heavily. I apologized, didn't I? What more do you want? I placed the dishes in the sink with deliberate care, fighting the urge to smash them against the porcelain. What I want, I said slowly, turning to face him, is to understand why you would say something like that in the first place. Do you actually believe it, or were you just trying to hurt me? Tyler's gaze slid away from mine. Of course I don't believe it. Liam is obviously mine. Obviously, I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. You know, I've never given you any reason to doubt that. Not once in our entire relationship have I been unfaithful or dishonest with you. I know that, he said, his tone defensive. Do you? Because last night you were pretty comfortable letting your entire family believe otherwise. He stood up abruptly, moving to the coffee pot, keeping his back to me. I told you, it was just a joke that landed badly. Can we please just move past it? Move past it, I echoed. Like Liam can just move past hearing his father suggest he doesn't belong to him? Like I can move past being humiliated in front of your family? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. And what about what Liam overheard? That conversation with Kate? Tyler's shoulders stiffened. He misunderstood. He's 7, for God's sake. He doesn't understand adult conversations. He understood enough, I said. Who's Kate, Tyler? He turned to face me finally, coffee mug clutched in his hands like a shield. She's a colleague, nothing more. A colleague you talked to about our marriage? About staying with us for appearances? It wasn't like that, he insisted. It was a bad day at work. I was venting. People say things they don't mean when they're frustrated. I studied his face. This man I had lived with for 8 years, shared a bed with, raised a child with. When had he become such a stranger? Or had I just been too afraid to see what was right in front of me? Are you having an affair? I asked. Directly. No, he exclaimed, seeming genuinely offended by the question. Absolutely not. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but strangely, I realized it didn't matter as much as I would have expected. Whether he was physically cheating or not, he had already betrayed our family in ways that cut deeper than any affair. I think you should leave for a while, I said, the words emerging with a calm certainty that surprised me. Tyler's eyes widened. What? Because of one stupid comment? You're overreacting, Emma. Am I? Because it feels like last night was just the most visible symptom of something that's been wrong for a long time. I crossed my arms, suddenly cold despite the warm kitchen. When was the last time you came to one of Liam's soccer games? Or helped him with homework? When was the last time you asked me about my classes, or my day at work, or anything about my life at all? I've been busy, he said defensively. The Charleston project is at a critical stage. You know that. You're always busy, Tyler, and there's always a project. But somewhere along the way, you stopped making room for us in your life. We became inconvenient, an obligation, something you tolerate rather than cherish. He set his coffee mug down hard, liquid sloshing over the rim. That's not fair. I provide for this family. I work 60-hour weeks so we can have this house, so Liam can go to that fancy school, so you can take your classes without worrying about money. And I'm grateful for that, I said sincerely. But a family needs more than financial support. We need your presence, your attention, your heart. I took a shaky breath. And I'm not sure that's something you want to give anymore. Tyler ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. So what? You want a divorce? Over one bad night? I want some space, I said. I want time to think about what's best for Liam and for me. And what about what's best for me? He demanded. This is my house too. My family. Yes, it is, I agreed. A family you suggested might not even be yours last night. A family you told a colleague you only stay with for appearances. So forgive me if I'm having a hard time believing that what's best for us is actually a priority for you. We stared at each other across the kitchen, the space between us filled with years of accumulated hurts, disappointments, and failures large and small. In his eyes, I could see a mixture of anger and fear. Not fear of losing us, I realized with a pang, but fear of losing control of the narrative, of having to face consequences for his actions. I think, I said quietly, that we both need some time to decide what we really want going forward. And I think Liam needs a break from the tension between us. Tyler's jaw worked, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. For a moment, I thought he might argue further, might refuse to leave the house he paid for, the life he had orchestrated. But then his shoulders sagged slightly. Fine, he said tersely. I'll pack a bag. But this isn't over, Emma. We need to talk about this like adults. We will, I promised. But not today. Not while everything is still so raw. He nodded curtly and left the kitchen. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, the creak of the bedroom door. David nodded, respecting the boundary. Fair enough. Just, I've been where you are, you know. When Lisa got sick, my world fell apart. Different circumstances, I know, but that feeling of everything changing overnight, I recognize it. I studied him. This man who had rebuilt a life for himself and his daughter after unimaginable loss. There was a quiet strength about him, a centeredness that I envied. How did you do it? I found myself asking. Start over, I mean. He considered the question, taking a sip of his coffee. One day at a time. Some days, 1 hour at a time. He glanced back at the children. And I focused on what remained, not what was lost. May needed me to be present, to be her constant in a world that had just become very inconstant. So that's what I tried to be. His words resonated deeply. Be present. Focus on what remains, not what is lost. Wasn't that exactly what Liam needed from me now? Tyler and I are separating, I said quietly, the words strange and new in my mouth. I hadn't spoken them aloud to anyone yet, not even my closest friends. David nodded, no judgment or surprise in his expression. I had a feeling something significant was happening. Liam's been a little more withdrawn at practice lately. You noticed that? I was touched by his attentiveness. I try to pay attention to all my players, not just how they're performing on the field, but how they're doing as people. He shrugged. It's the teacher in me, I guess. We watched the children for a moment in comfortable silence. Liam was explaining something to May with animated gestures, his earlier solemnity completely gone. Kids are remarkably resilient, David said finally. More than we give them credit for. May has walked through fire, but look at her, still. Finding joy, still curious about the world. The key is honesty. Children can handle difficult truths if they're delivered with love and reassurance. That's what I'm trying to do, I admitted. Be honest without burdening him with adult problems. It's a delicate balance, David agreed. But from what I've seen of you as a parent, you've got good instincts. Trust them. His vote of confidence warmed me unexpectedly. In the chaos of the past few days, I'd been second-guessing every decision, wondering if I was handling things all wrong. Having someone, especially someone who had navigated their own family crisis, affirm my approach, meant more than I could express. "Thank you," I said simply. "That helps more than you know." We spent another hour at the museum, the four of us moving through the remaining exhibits together. There was an ease to our temporary foursome that surprised me. David's calm presence, May's sweet interactions with Liam, the simple pleasure of adult conversation mixed with childish wonder. When it was time to leave, David hesitated in the museum lobby. "We're heading to that new pizza place around the corner for lunch. Nothing fancy, but they have this create-your-own pizza station for kids that May loves. You're welcome to join us if you'd like." I glanced at Liam, who was already nodding enthusiastically. "Pizza! Can we, Mom?" Despite my earlier promise of ice cream, it was clear he was more excited about continuing the adventure with his coach and new friend. And truthfully, I was enjoying the company as well, the normalcy of it, the way David's straightforward kindness made the knot of anxiety I'd been carrying since the dinner party loosen just a bit. "We'd love to," I decided. "Thank you." The pizza place was bright and casual, with a wall of windows overlooking a small park. The children were given child-sized aprons and chef's hats at the pizza-making station, where they gleefully piled toppings onto their personal pies under the supervision of a patient staff member. David and I claimed a booth nearby where we could watch them while placing our own orders. The conversation flowed easily, shifting from school to work to books we'd both enjoyed. For the first time in days, I wasn't mentally rehearsing difficult conversations with Tyler or worrying about custody arrangements or financial implications. I was simply present, engaged in the moment, laughing at David's dry observations about teenage students and sharing stories about particularly challenging nights in the emergency room. "So, how's the nurse practitioner program going?" he asked, as our pizzas arrived. "You're doing family practice, right?" I was surprised he remembered. It had only come up once, months ago, when I'd had to rearrange my volunteer schedule for Liam's team due to an exam. "It's challenging, but good," I told him. "I'll be halfway through the program after this semester. The schedule is brutal sometimes, especially with clinical rotations, but it feels right. Like I'm finally pursuing something I've wanted for years." "That's no small thing," he said thoughtfully. "Finding work that aligns with your purpose. Too many people never get there." "Did you always know you wanted to teach?" I asked. He laughed. "No, actually. I was headed for research physics, had visions of working at CERN or NASA. But then I did some TA work in grad school and realized I loved the moments when students' eyes lit up with understanding. There's nothing quite like witnessing someone grasp a concept that changes how they see the world." His passion was evident, shining through in his animated expression. I could see why he was an effective teacher and coach. That genuine enthusiasm was contagious. "The kids adore you," I said. "Liam talks about Coach David all the time. Coach David says you have to follow through with your kick. Coach David says teamwork means passing even when you could take the shot yourself." He smiled, looking somewhat embarrassed by the praise. "I just try to teach them more than the game. Soccer's great, but the life skills, perseverance, cooperation, gracefully handling both victory and defeat, those are the real lessons." The children returned from the pizza station then, proudly carrying their culinary creations. Liam's was a chaotic landscape of pepperoni, olives, and what appeared to be a mountain of cheese. May's was arranged in a precise pattern of vegetables forming a smiley face. "Look, Mom, I made the best pizza ever," Liam declared, sliding into the booth beside me. "Coach David, do you think this is too much cheese? The pizza lady said there's no such thing." "The pizza lady is very wise," David said solemnly, making Liam giggle. As we ate, I found myself observing the easy interaction between David and May. The small touches of affection, the inside jokes, the attentive way he listened when she spoke. It was clear they were a solid team, the bond between them strengthened, rather than weakened by what they'd endured together. I thought about Tyler, about his increasingly rare moments of real connection with Liam, about how he'd missed soccer games for work, forgotten to call when he promised, treated fatherhood like an obligation rather than a privilege, about how different things might have been if he'd approached parenthood with even a fraction of the commitment David showed. That train of thought led to uncomfortable questions. Had I enabled Tyler's distance? Had I compensated so thoroughly for his absences that I'd made it too easy for him to disengage? Had I been so determined to create the perfect family, the one I'd never had growing up, that I'd ignored clear signs our foundation was cracking? "You went somewhere else for a minute there," David observed quietly while the children were distracted by the restaurant's small arcade section after finishing their meals. "Just thinking," I admitted, "wondering what I could have done differently, if I somehow contributed to the problems in my marriage." David considered this. "It's natural to question your own role when a relationship fails. And maybe there are things you could have done differently. There always are. But from what little I know, it sounds like you've been carrying more than your fair share for a long time." His perception was uncomfortably accurate. "How did you know that?" He shrugged. "I've seen you at every practice, every game, handling team snacks, coordinating with other parents, all while juggling work and school. I've seen Tyler miss most games, show up late to the ones he does attend, looking at his phone the whole time. I've noticed how Liam looks for your reaction after a good play, not his dad's." He paused. "I hope that's not overstepping." "Wasn't. It was simply the truth, seen through objective eyes. No, you're right. I wanted so badly for us to be a real family, the kind where everyone shows up for each other." "You are a real family," David said firmly. "You and Liam. Family isn't defined by a particular structure. It's defined by love, by presence, by the willingness to put someone else's needs alongside your own. From everything I've seen, you do that every day." His words touched something deep inside me, a wound I hadn't fully acknowledged. My own father's abandonment had left me with a desperation to create the intact, stable family I'd never had. I'd clung to the form of that dream even as its substance had eroded year by year. "I'm afraid of failing him," I confessed, watching Liam enthusiastically play a racing game with May, of not being enough on my own. David's expression softened. "Every good parent has that fear. But Emma, you're already succeeding. Look at him. He's kind, thoughtful, brave enough to stand up for what's right even when it's difficult. That's your influence." "He is pretty amazing," I agreed, a swell of love and pride temporarily displacing my anxiety. "And for what it's worth," David added, "you don't have to do it all alone. There's no medal for refusing help. Communities exist for a reason." I thought about my small circle of friends, my co-workers at the hospital, the other soccer parents who had always been friendly, but whom I'd kept at a polite distance, too busy maintaining the facade of my perfect family to build deeper connections. "I'm not very good at asking for help," I admitted. "Most of us aren't," David said with a smile. "But it's a skill worth developing. When Lisa was sick, I tried to handle everything myself at first. Her care, May's needs, my job, the household. I nearly collapsed from the strain. Learning to accept help was one of the hardest and most important lessons of that time." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text. Tyler's name appeared on the screen. "We need to talk. Coming by the house tonight at 7. The presumption that I would simply be available at his convenience, that he could dictate the terms of our interaction, was so familiar it almost didn't register. Almost. "Everything okay?" David asked, noting my expression. "Tyler," I said by way of explanation. "Apparently we're talking tonight, according to him." "Ah," David nodded. The unilateral declaration approach. Classic. I laughed despite myself. "Exactly." "You know," he said carefully, You're allowed to set boundaries, to say, that doesn't work for me, or I need more notice, or even just, no, not tonight. The simple permission felt revolutionary. How long had it been since I'd prioritized my own needs, my own readiness, in relation to Tyler? You're right, I said, typing a response. Can't do tonight. I'll call you tomorrow to set up a time that works for both of us. I pressed send before. I could second-guess myself, half expecting immediate pushback, but the phone remained silent. There, I said, feeling a small but significant shift in my internal landscape. Boundary established. David raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. Well done. The children returned from the arcade, May proudly displaying a small stuffed penguin she'd won. Look what Liam helped me get. He showed me just how to aim the ball. That was really nice of you, buddy, I said, ruffling his hair. Liam shrugged, but I could see he was pleased by the acknowledgement. It was easy once you know the trick. Dad showed me last time we came here. The casual mention of Tyler caught me off guard. It was a reminder that despite everything, Tyler was still Liam's father, still a significant figure in his life. Whatever came next, I would need to find a way to honor that connection while protecting Liam from the fallout of our marital problems. As we gathered our things to leave, David hesitated again. Listen, I know things are complicated right now, but if you ever need someone to talk to, or if Liam needs some extra attention, please don't hesitate to reach out. Sometimes it helps to connect with someone who's walked a similar path. The offer was sincere, his expression open and kind. In another context, at another time, I might have wondered if there was more behind it. If this was the beginning of something beyond friendship. But right now, what mattered was the simple human connection, the reminder that I wasn't as alone as I sometimes felt. Thank you, I said. For today, for the conversation, for seeing us, really seeing us. It means a lot. Any time, he said, and I believed him. As Liam and I walked to the car, his small hand in mine again, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel so soon after the dinner party disaster, a fragile but genuine sense of hope. Not that my marriage would magically repair itself, or that the hard conversations and difficult transitions ahead would be easy, but hope that whatever shape our family took going forward, Liam and I would be okay. That we were already okay, in the ways that mattered most. Did you have fun today? I asked him as I buckled him into his seat. He nodded enthusiastically. The best day ever. Can we hang out with Coach David and May again sometime? She told me her dad makes pancakes in dinosaur shapes on Saturdays. We'll see, I said, smiling at his transparent hint. Maybe we could invite them to the park sometime. Yes, he agreed. And Mom? I know we didn't get ice cream after the museum like you promised, but I'm not even mad. Pizza was way better. I laughed, touched by his easy forgiveness of my broken promise. How about we get ice cream on the way home anyway? Double dessert day? His eyes widened with delight. Can we really? Absolutely, I said, starting. The car. Some days just call for extra sweetness, don't you think? As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of David and May in my rearview mirror, walking hand in hand toward their own car. Two people who had faced profound loss and emerged resilient, joyful, connected. It was a powerful reminder that families came in all forms, that healing was possible even after heartbreak, that new beginnings could arise from painful endings. Today had been just one day, one small step in a journey with no clear destination. But for the first time since the dinner party, I felt equipped for the path ahead, whatever shape it might take. 2 weeks after the museum trip, I found myself sitting across from Tyler in a small conference room at his lawyer's office. The space was deliberately neutral, no family photos or personal touches, just sleek furniture and abstract art in muted colors. His lawyer, Patricia Winters, sat beside him, elegant in a tailored suit, a leather portfolio open on the table before her. My own lawyer, Jasmine Torres, was to my right, her presence reassuring despite the tension in the room. "So we're agreed on the financial terms," Patricia was saying, her tone brisk but not unkind. "Joint ownership of the house until Liam turns 18, with Emma maintaining primary residence. Tyler covers the mortgage, insurance, and property. Taxes, while maintenance costs are shared equally." I nodded, still struggling to believe we had reached this point. The dinner party felt simultaneously like yesterday and a lifetime ago. In the aftermath, things had moved with surprising speed. Tyler had initially resisted the idea of separation, vacillating between angry accusations and tearful pleas for another chance. But when I'd remained firm, he'd shifted tactics, hiring Patricia and initiating formal discussions about division of assets and custody arrangements. "And regarding visitation," Patricia continued, consulting her notes, "Tyler proposes alternating. Weekends with one evening visit during the week. Major holidays to be split, with a rotating schedule for Thanksgiving and Christmas." The word visitation made my stomach clench. It sounded so clinical, reducing Tyler's relationship with Liam to scheduled blocks on a calendar. Despite everything, despite the hurt and anger I still felt, I couldn't help but grieve for what might have been, the intact family I'd tried so hard to preserve. "That schedule works for Emma," Jasmine confirmed, her voice steady, "with the understanding that both parties will maintain flexibility for special occasions or changes in circumstance." Tyler hadn't looked at me directly since we'd entered the room. He sat stiffly in his chair, eyes fixed on the papers before him, jaw tight. This business-like approach had been his idea, letting the lawyers handle the details, minimizing direct interaction. In some ways, it was easier. In others, it felt like the final confirmation of how disconnected we'd become, that we couldn't even navigate the end of our marriage without intermediaries. "There is one additional matter," Patricia said, glancing at Tyler. "My client would like to revisit the therapy arrangements for Liam." This got my full attention. "What about them?" Tyler finally looked up, meeting my gaze for the first time. "I don't think he needs to be seeing a therapist every week. It's excessive. He's 7, for God's sake. Kids are resilient." I felt a flare of anger, quickly suppressed. Dr. Patel is helping him process a significant change in his life. She's been a tremendous support for him. "I'm not saying no therapy at all," Tyler clarified, his tone defensive. "Just maybe once a month instead of weekly. I don't want him thinking there's something wrong with him." "Therapy doesn't imply there's something wrong with him," I countered, working to keep my voice even. "It gives him tools to handle difficult emotions and a safe space to express feelings he might not want to share with either of us." Jasmine placed a subtle, calming hand on my arm. "Perhaps we could consult with Dr. Patel directly?" she suggested. "Get her professional recommendation on the appropriate frequency based on Liam's specific needs?" Patricia nodded. "That seems reasonable. We can table this discussion pending her input." The meeting continued. Detailed discussions of holiday schedules and summer vacations, educational decisions, and medical coverage. Each topic methodically addressed and resolved, the dismantling of our family life executed with efficient precision. When we finally concluded, Patricia and Jasmine stepped out to make copies of the preliminary agreement, leaving Tyler and me alone for the first time in weeks. The silence between us was weighted with unspoken words, paths not taken, promises unfulfilled. "So this is really happening," Tyler said finally, his voice softer than it had been during the formal discussions. "Yes," I said simply. "It is." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it sent an unexpected pang through me. "I keep thinking about that dinner. If I could take back what I said—" "But you can't," I interrupted gently. "And honestly, Tyler, it wasn't just what you said that night. It was the culmination of years of distance, of feeling like Liam and I were accessories to your life rather than partners in it. He flinched slightly but didn't argue. How is he? Really? He has good days and hard days, I said truthfully. He misses you. He's angry with you. Both things can be true at once. Tyler nodded, looking down at his hands. I've been trying. With him. The weekend visits, the calls. It's different when it's just the two of us. I don't always know what to say or do. There was a vulnerability in his admission that I hadn't expected. You don't have to be perfect, I said. You just have to be present. Really present, not checking emails or taking calls. He notices those things more than you think. I'm learning that, he acknowledged. A pause, then. And you? How are you doing with all this? The question surprised me. It was the first time in longer than I could remember that he'd asked about my well-being in a way that felt genuine rather than perfunctory. I'm okay, I said, considering my answer carefully. Not great, not terrible. Taking it day by day. My classes keep me busy, and work, and of course Liam. You always were the strong one, Tyler said, a complicated mix of admiration and resentment in his tone. I shook my head. Not strong, just practiced at handling things on my own. He had the grace to look chagrined at that. Before he could respond, the lawyers returned with documents to sign. The moment of relative openness closed, the business of divorce resuming its formal progression. As we all stood to leave, Tyler hesitated, then said, I'll pick Liam up at 6 on Friday for the weekend, if that still works. That's fine, I confirmed. He's excited about the baseball game you mentioned. A small, genuine smile crossed Tyler's face. Yeah, I got good seats right behind the dugout. It was a tiny, ordinary exchange, the kind of co-parenting conversation we would have many times in the years ahead. Not warm, not intimate, but civil, functional. It wasn't what I'd dreamed of when we'd exchanged vows 8 years ago, but it was what we had now, what Liam needed us to have. As I drove home from the meeting, I found myself thinking about the path that had led to this point. The dinner party had been the breaking point, the moment when pretense became impossible to maintain. But the fractures in our marriage had been forming for years, hairline cracks that had gradually widened until the structure couldn't hold. I pulled into the driveway of what was now officially my house, at least for daily living purposes. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn, where Liam's bicycle lay abandoned next to the oak tree. My mother's car was parked at the curb. She'd been staying with us more often lately, helping with Liam while I navigated lawyer meetings and work and school commitments. Inside, I found them in the kitchen. Liam perched on a stool at the counter, flour dusting his cheeks and the tip of his nose. My mother stood beside him, guiding his hands as they shaped what appeared to be homemade pasta. "Look, Mom!" Liam exclaimed when he saw me. "We're making ravioli from scratch, like on that cooking show." "I can see that," I laughed, dropping my purse and keys on the counter. "It looks like most of the flour made it onto you instead of into the dough." He giggled, a sound that never failed to lighten my heart. "Grandma says I'm a natural mess maker. It's my special talent." "One of many," my mother agreed, winking at me over his head. "How did it go today?" "Fine," I said, the universal code for, "we'll talk later when little ears aren't listening." I moved to the sink to wash my hands. "Need any help with this? Pasta extravaganza?" "You can start on the filling," my mother suggested. "Everything's laid out in the fridge." The three of us worked together in comfortable rhythm, Liam proudly rolling out dough with the small rolling pin my mother had brought, me mixing ricotta with herbs and cheese, my mother overseeing the entire operation with the confident expertise of someone who had been cooking Italian food for 40 years. "Mr. Chen called while you were out," my mother mentioned casually as she helped Liam cut circles from the pasta sheet. Something about switching the practice schedule this week? I wrote it down by the phone. Thanks, I said, feeling a small flutter of awareness at the mention of David's name. Since the museum day, we'd run into each other several times, at soccer practice, at the neighborhood farmers market, once at the library where Liam and May had both been attending a children's workshop on building simple machines. Each encounter had been friendly, casual, but marked by an undercurrent of connection that I wasn't quite ready to examine too closely. After dinner, once Liam was bathed and in pajamas, I sat on the edge of his bed for our nightly reading ritual. He'd recently become obsessed with a series about kid detectives, and we were halfway through the third book, taking turns reading pages aloud. "Mom?" he asked as I closed the book after our designated 2 chapters. "Can I ask you something?" "Always," I assured him, recognizing the serious tone that meant this wasn't a simple question about bedtime extensions or extra snacks. "Are you and Dad getting a divorce? Like for real?" I'd been as honest as possible with him throughout the separation process, but we hadn't explicitly used the word divorce yet. The preliminary agreement today made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Yes, sweetheart," I said gently. "We are. The lawyers are helping us figure out how to arrange things so that you'll still spend lots of time with both of us, just not all together in the same house anymore." He nodded, processing this. "Tommy in my class has divorced parents. He has 2 bedrooms and 2 bikes, one at each house." "You might have some things like that too," I acknowledged. "Dad's looking for an apartment closer to us so that you can go back and forth more easily." "Will he be my dad the same as before, even with divorced papers?" I stroked his hair, my heart breaking a little at the fundamental worry behind his question. "Absolutely. Divorce changes the relationship between me and your dad, but it doesn't change the fact that he's your father and he loves you. That will never change." Liam considered this. "Even though he said that thing at dinner? About not being sure if I'm really his kid?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Despite therapy sessions and numerous conversations about the dinner incident, this worry had clearly remained lodged in his mind. "Liam, look at me," I said, waiting until his eyes met mine. "Your dad said something very hurtful and very wrong that night. He was angry and he wanted to hurt me. And unfortunately, you got caught in the crossfire. But he knows you're his son. He's never doubted that, not really." "How can you be so sure?" he asked, his voice small. I thought carefully about how to answer. This wasn't a moment for platitudes or easy reassurances. Liam deserved the truth, shaped in a way his 7-year-old mind could grasp. "Because I know what's true," I said finally. "And sometimes, buddy, when someone says something that isn't true, it tells you more about what's happening inside them than about the actual facts." Your dad was feeling sad and angry, and maybe a little scared, and those feelings came out as mean words. But those words weren't true. He seemed to absorb this, his forehead furrowing in thought. "Like when I told Josh that his science project was stupid after he said my drawing was bad?" I smiled at his insightful comparison. "Exactly like that. Were you really saying his project was stupid, or were you feeling hurt about what he said?" "About your drawing?" "I was hurt," Liam admitted. "His project was actually pretty cool. It had a real working volcano." "Right. So you said something that wasn't true because of how you were feeling. Grown-ups do that too sometimes, even though we should know better." He nodded, the simple explanation seeming to satisfy him. "So even with the divorce, we'll still be a family, just a different kind?" "Exactly," I said, marveling at his capacity to distill complex emotional realities to their essence. "A different kind of family, but still a family. With just as much love, maybe even more because we won't be spending so much energy on being unhappy with each other." This seemed to make sense to him. He snuggled deeper under his covers, clutching his favorite stuffed dragon. "I think I like that better." I didn't like it when you and Dad were always having quiet fights. Quiet fights? I echoed, curious about his perception. You know, when you're not yelling but your faces are all tight and you talk in those super polite voices that don't sound like your real voices. Those are quiet fights. I couldn't help but laugh at his accurate description of the strained civility that had characterized so many of our interactions in recent years. You're pretty observant, buddy. Dr. Patel says I'm perceptive, he informed me proudly. That means I notice things. She's absolutely right, I agreed, leaning down to kiss his forehead. And one thing I hope you always notice is how much I love you. I know that, Mom, he said, already drifting toward sleep. That's the easiest thing to notice ever. After he fell asleep, I found my mother in the living room, reading glasses perched on her nose as she flipped through a magazine. She looked up when I entered, patting the couch beside her in invitation. So it's official? She asked as I sank down next to her, suddenly exhausted. Pretty much, I confirmed. Just some details to work out, but the framework is in place. Joint legal custody, me as primary residence, Tyler with regular visitation. She nodded, her hand finding mine and squeezing gently. How are you feeling about it all? I considered the question seriously. Sad, obviously. No one gets married. Planning for divorce? But also relieved in a way. Like we can stop pretending things are fine when they aren't. Start building something more honest. That makes sense, she said. Your father and I should have done the same long before we did. All those years of tension and fighting didn't do you or your brother any favors. It was rare for her to mention my father. Their divorce, when I was 12, had been acrimonious, marked by bitter custody battles and financial disputes that had dragged on for years. Perhaps that difficult history was why I'd been so determined to make my own marriage work, to prove that forever was possible if you just tried hard enough. I hope we're handling it better, I said, for Liam's sake. You are, she assured me. The fact that you and Tyler can sit in the same room with lawyers and work out an agreement without World War III erupting is already a victory. And Liam knows, really knows, that he's loved. That makes all the difference. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the distant hum of the refrigerator and the occasional passing car the only sounds. You know, my mother said, eventually, when your father left, I thought my life was over. I defined myself so completely as a wife and mother that I couldn't imagine who I would be without the wife part of that equation. I turned to look at her, struck by the parallel to my own situation. But you figured it out. She laughed softly. Eventually, not gracefully, and not without some spectacular mistakes along the way. But yes, I figured it out. Found out I was stronger and more capable than I ever realized. Built a life that was different from what I'd planned, but good in its own way. She squeezed my hand again. You will too. You're already doing it. Her confidence in me was bolstering. Despite our sometimes complicated relationship, her tendency toward overprotectiveness, my stubborn independence, she had been an unexpected source of strength during this upheaval, stepping in to help with Liam, offering practical support, without unsolicited advice. Thanks, Mom, for everything. She waved away my gratitude. That's what family does. And speaking of family, she hesitated, a gleam of humor in her eyes. This Coach David seems very nice. I groaned, but couldn't help smiling. Really, Mom? I'm not even divorced yet. I'm just saying, he seems like a good man. The way he is with his daughter, with Liam. The way he looks at you when he thinks no one is noticing. We're just friends, I insisted, feeling a flush creep up my neck. He's Liam's coach. We run in the same circles. She said, clearly unconvinced. Just an observation. No pressure. I changed the subject then, but her words lingered in my mind as we chatted about more neutral topics. My brother's new job in Seattle, her senior yoga class, the community garden she'd helped start at her apartment complex. Later, after she'd gone home and the house was quiet, I found myself on the back deck, wrapped in a sweater against the September evening chill. The sky was clear, stars emerging one by one in the darkening blue. From Liam's room upstairs, the soft glow of his rocket ship nightlight was visible through the curtains. My phone buzzed with a text. David, just confirming practice moved to 5 p.m. tomorrow instead of 4. May asked if Liam wants to help with the team snack. She's on a baking kick lately, for better or worse. I smiled, picturing May's determined little face as she measured ingredients with scientific precision. I'd noticed that about her, the methodical approach she brought to every task, so different from Liam's creative chaos but complementary to it. Sounds great. Liam will be thrilled. Baking and soccer, his two current obsessions. I hesitated, then added, "Thanks again for being so supportive through all this. It means more than you know." His response came quickly. "That's what friends do. See you tomorrow." Friends. It was an accurate description of what we were. Two single parents who enjoyed each other's company, whose children got along well, who shared some common interests and values. If there was potential for something, more somewhere down the road, it wasn't something I needed to figure out tonight, or this month, or even this year. For now, I was learning to embrace the present moment, to find joy in small pleasures. Liam's laughter, my growing competence in my nurse practitioner studies, quiet evenings like this one where I could simply breathe and be. The divorce agreement today was one more step in a journey I hadn't chosen, but was determined to navigate with grace and purpose. It wasn't the end of something so much as a transition into a new chapter, one where authenticity took precedence over appearance, where Liam could witness healthy relationships even if they weren't traditional ones, where I could rediscover parts of myself that had been submerged in the effort to maintain a failing marriage. Inside, the house felt different than it had just weeks ago. The weight of pretense had lifted, replaced by a simpler, more honest way of being. Liam's art covered the refrigerator, bright and exuberant. My textbooks and study notes claimed space on the dining table. My mother's influence was visible in the new herb garden on the windowsill, the handmade quilt draped over the couch. It was becoming a true reflection of who we were, not who we thought we should be. As I gazed up at the stars, I thought about that dinner party that had changed everything. The cruel words, the shocking revelation, the moment when my 7-year-old son had shown more courage and clarity than all the adults combined. In standing up for himself, for the truth as he understood it, Liam had given me permission to do the same, to stop accepting less than I deserved, to acknowledge that sometimes love means letting go rather than holding on. The path ahead wasn't perfectly clear. There would be challenges, setbacks, difficult conversations, and complicated emotions to navigate. Co-parenting with Tyler would require patience and forgiveness I wasn't always sure I possessed. Balancing work, school, and single motherhood would test my endurance and resilience. Building a new life while honoring the value of the old one would demand wisdom and grace. But sitting there under the vast night sky, I felt a profound sense of possibility. Not the giddy optimism of youth, but something deeper and more grounded. A quiet confidence that whatever came next, Liam and I would face it together. That we were already stronger than we knew. That truth, however painful in the moment, ultimately sets you free. In the distance, a shooting star streaked across the darkness, a brief, brilliant arc of light. I closed my eyes, not to make a wish but to offer gratitude, for second chances, for new beginnings, for the unexpected gifts that sometimes arrive in the wrapping of heartbreak, for a little boy who had the courage to speak his truth and in doing so taught his mother to speak hers. When I opened my eyes again, the night seemed somehow brighter, the stars more vivid, the future less frightening than it had been. One step at a time, one day at a time, we were finding our way forward. Not to the life I had once imagined, but to one that held its own kind of beauty, its own authentic joy. A life built on truth rather than illusion. A life worthy of the brave little boy sleeping upstairs, and of the woman I was becoming. Stronger, wiser, and more truly myself with each passing day. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.